Is it your first Monday this week?
It is my first Monday.
No, today.
Heads up.
Good afternoon, bon après-midi. My name is David Granovsky. I'm here today on behalf of B'nai Brith Canada. Established in 1875, B'nai Brith Canada remains this country's longest-serving human rights organization. We challenge anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry, and all forms of hatred with resolve. B'nai Brith Canada has always been driven by Jewish ethics, including strengthening the communities in which we live. We support the well-being of Jewish Canadians and all other Canadians in need, including refugees from around the world, Indigenous communities, interfaith and intercultural groups, vulnerable populations, and seniors. Most recently, B'nai Brith Canada stood in solidarity with our Iranian community in Canada as they advocate for a free Iran and a better future for the Iranian community people. Tomorrow, as we mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we are confronted with the reality that remembrance is not enough and that government action is needed now. Canada is currently experiencing an escalating and unprecedented crisis of anti-Semitism. In response, we are here today to call for urgent and concrete action from the Prime Minister and the federal government. En réponse, nous sommes ici d'aujourd'hui pour réclamer des mesures urgentes et concrètes de la part du Premier ministre et du gouvernement fédéral. Joining me today is our Chief Executive Officer, Simon Wolle, as well as our Regional Director for Quebec and Atlantic Canada, Paula Samuel, along with members of Ottawa's Jewish community who are here standing with us in solidarity. I also want to acknowledge the courage of those standing with us here today. Mordechai Brott, Dr. Nelly Kaplan-Mirth, Olivia Milikovsky, and Daniela Fuchs. Each has been personally impacted by anti-Semitism, and their presence is not only to be viewed as isolated incidents to understand and to learn from, but also as being illustrative of a national pattern to be addressed. Simon Wolle will begin with remarks in English, followed by Paula Samuel in French. B'nai Brith Canada will then take questions from the media. B'nai Brith Canada répondra ensuite aux questions des médias. It is now my privilege to invite Simon Wolle, B'nai Brith Canada's CEO, to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Simon Wolle, the CEO of B'nai Brith Canada. We're here today because Canada is facing a national crisis of anti-Semitism that demands urgent and concrete action from the federal government. So let me start by being very clear. Jewish Canadians are not responsible for any foreign conflict. Yet the Jewish people have been unduly villainized and blamed for exactly these circumstances. And this amounts to a malicious form of collective punishment. Anti-Semitic incidents have been occurring with increasing scope and frequency without a sufficient response for years now. Our most recent annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents released in April of 2025 paints a stark picture. Anti-Semitic incidents have seen a dramatic rise of 124% in Canada over the past 3 years. There is an average of more than 17 reported anti-Semitic incidents every single day across our country. The epidemic of anti-Semitism throughout the country is now pervasive, with Jewish Canadians being targeted at schools, campuses, synagogues, community centers, workplaces, businesses, and neighborhoods all across Canada. Direct face-to-face harassment, intimidation, threats, and physical acts, including violence, have become alarmingly normalized. We have witnessed violent extremist terrorist plots to kidnap and murder Jewish Canadians. Online harassment remains largely unregulated. It perpetuates lies about Jews. It negatively affects our youth and our education system and is growing increasingly out of control, casting an even darker shadow on the lengthy shadow cast by October 7th, 2023. Jewish students of all ages across Canada, including Olivia and Daniela standing here in solidarity today, are amongst those on the front lines of this crisis. They face vandalism, harassment, and intimidation, from anti-Semitic graffiti and defacement of Jewish symbols to verbal and physical threats. These incidents, though often reported, are too often dismissed by academic leaders, police, government, school boards, parent-teacher groups, and others, and not because they are in any way minor, but because systemic and internalized anti-Semitism has taken hold of too many Canadian institutions, including at the highest levels of academia, media, unions, and school boards. At universities, colleges, high schools, and elementary schools across Canada, the climate of fear is affecting students' mental health and academic success and progress. And no student should ever have to choose between their safety or attending class, or whether it is safe for them to wear a Star of David, or whether they can participate fully in everyday Jewish life. And the student experiences are not isolated. They are part of a nationwide pattern illustrating a national crisis. And if no actions are taken to redress this bigotry and its harm to Canadian Jews, and in turn, all Canadian values, then we fear that this sends a really dangerous message to Canadians that hate against a minority group is not only acceptable, but welcome. Other recent examples from right here in Ottawa illustrate the personal cost. Mordechai Brith was verbally harassed in a restaurant just for having discussions related to travel in Israel. Dr. Neely Kaplan-Murth has been subjected to repeated harassment and threatening anti-Semitic messages. In fact, the situation was so severe it led to multiple criminal charges and convictions. These are just snapshots of a systemic issue. Historical dangerous tropes are being normalized: racial anti-Semitism, religious anti-Semitism, political anti-Semitism, the most contemporary form of the world's oldest hatred, are all becoming a part of everyday Canadian life. So while Canadian leaders often speak in condemnation, action has lagged. And while legislative reform initiatives are welcomed, they're not enough. In my recent letter of January 15th to the Prime Minister that I am holding here in my hand today, I stressed that Canada cannot wait for a tragedy like the Bondi terrorist attack or the Manchester attack to act here at home. Even the Canadian Security Intelligence Service has recently warned that a violent extremist attack against Canada's Jewish community is a realistic possibility. So silence and inaction from all levels of government, community leaders, and civil society is no longer acceptable, and the Government of Canada must show leadership by acting now. And there are two immediate steps the federal government must take. First, we are calling for a federal royal commission on anti-Semitism in Canada. And such an independent commission would investigate anti-Semitism across the country as a national concern, examine and evaluate the scope of the threat, contextualize the historical and current sources and instigators of anti-Semitism, and provide clear and practical recommendations for immediately protecting Jewish Canadians and Canadian values. And that Royal Commission would serve to demonstrate that the Government of Canada is in fact committed to taking a whole-of-government approach to counter the spread of this deadly virus and to protect Jewish Canadians and, in turn, our underlying national values. Second, while vacant, we call for an immediate appointment of a new Special Envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism. The position has been vacant for 6 months now, and therefore the Special Envoy's office cannot fully carry out its mandate. Without a Special Envoy, Canada lacks a community advocate to the federal government on all of these very critical issues being discussed. Frankly, the absence of the position undermines Canada's international reputation and signals a lack of commitment to fighting anti-Semitism. This spring, B'nai Brith Canada will publish our 2025 annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents, the authoritative guide to understanding this deepening crisis of anti-Semitism in Canada. And the preliminary findings are deeply alarming, with troubling trends extending into early 2026 already, underscoring the need for action by all levels of government. The time to act is now, for the safety, dignity, and security of Jewish Canadians, and for the moral integrity of Canada itself. Thank you. Please, Paula.
Bonjour. Je me présente, je suis Paula Samuel, la directrice régionale du Québec et le Canada Atlantique. Comme vous avez bien entendu, nous sommes réunis parce que le Canada fait face à une crise nationale de l'antisémitisme qui exige des mesures urgentes, concrètes et décisives de la part du gouvernement fédéral. C'est une crise grave qu'on ne peut pas ignorer. Soyons clairs, les Juifs du Canada ne sont pas responsables d'aucun conflit étranger et d'aucune tension géopolitique. Pourtant, à travers le pays, ils ont été injustement stigmatisés et tenus responsables de situations que ne relèvent aucunement d'eux. Il s'agit d'une forme pernicieuse et punition collective. Depuis plusieurs années, les incidents antisémites se multiplient, tant en fréquence qu'en gravité, sans réponse adéquate. Notre plus récent rapport annuel des incidents antisémites, publié en avril de 2025, brosse un portrait alarmant. Les incidents antisémites ont augmenté de 124% au Canada au cours des 3 dernières années. On recense en moyenne plus de 17 incidents antisémites par jour à l'échelle nationale. Cette réalité est persistante et généralisée dans l'ensemble du pays, où des Canadiens juifs sont pris pour cibler dans les écoles, les campus, les synagogues, les centres communautaires, les milieux de travail, les commerces et les quartiers d'un océan à l'autre. Au Canada, les agressions directes, l'intimidation et les menaces contre les Juifs deviennent de plus en plus courantes. On voit aussi des actes très graves, des agressions physiques, des menaces de mort, des tentatives de meurtre, du vandalisme et même des projets d'attentats. Cette violence se banalise, elle devient malheureusement normale. La haine en ligne augmente elle aussi. Elle diffuse de fausses informations et pousse certaines personnes vers leur radicalisation. Elle est encore très peu contrôlée. Tout cela ajoute à la violence et l'intimidation déjà présentes dans un contexte encore marqué par les événements du 7 octobre 2023. Les élèves et les étudiants juifs partout au Canada sont en première ligne de cette crise. Ils font face au vandalisme, au harcèlement et à l'intimidation, graffitis antisémites, profanation des symboles juifs, menaces verbales et physiques. Trop souvent, même lorsque ces incidents sont signalés, ils sont minimisés ou ignorés au lieu d'être pris au sérieux. Dans les universités, les collèges ainsi que dans les écoles primaires et secondaires, ce climat ne peut porter atteinte à la santé mentale des élèves et comportement de la réussite scolaire. Aucun élève ne devrait avoir à choisir entre la sécurité et le fait d'assister à ses cours. Aucun élève ne devrait craindre de porter une étoile de David, ni de se sentir intimidé au point de ne pas pouvoir vivre pleinement son identité juive. Ces témoignages ne sont pas des cas isolés. Ils font partie d'un problème national. Ils montrent que l'antisémitisme touche maintenant toutes les institutions, les établissements d'enseignement et les communautés partout au pays. Ces situations ne sont pas isolées. Elles font partie d'un problème national. Elles montrent que l'antisémitisme est maintenant présent partout. Si nous n'agissons pas, nous envoyons un message dangereux, que la haine envers une minorité, pourtant profondément liée à l'histoire du Canada, serait acceptable. Le silence et l'inaction ne sont plus acceptables. Des exemples récents, ici même à Ottawa, illustrant le coût humain de cette réalité. Mordechai Brith a été confronté verbalement dans un restaurant pour avoir évoqué un voyage en Israël. Le docteur Neil Kaplan-Murth, médecin de famille et ancien commissaire scolaire, a subi du harcèlement et des menaces antisémites à la répétition. La situation était si grave qu'elle a mené des accusations criminelles et les condamnations. Ces situations révèlent un problème profond. Partout au Canada, des Canadiens juifs font face à des menaces, à la violence et à l'intimidation dans leur vie quotidienne. Des stéréotypes dangereux deviennent acceptés et l'antisémitisme racial, religieux et politique s'installe dans le quotidien. Cette crise ne date pas d'hier. Bien que les dirigeants canadiens dénoncent régulièrement ces actes, les actions concrètes tardent, les initiatives législatives sont nécessaires, mais elles demeurent insuffisantes. Dans notre lettre du 15 janvier au Premier ministre, nous l'avons averti que le Canada ne peut pas attendre une tragédie comme à Bondi ou à Manchester pour agir. Nous lui avons aussi rappelé que selon le Service canadien de renseignement de sécurité, une attaque extrémiste visant la communauté juive ici au Canada est un risque réel. Le gouvernement du Canada doit faire preuve de leadership et en agissant sans délai. 2 mesures s'imposent d'urgence. Premièrement, une commission royale d'enquête fédérale sur l'antisémitisme au Canada indépendante qui aurait le mandat de enquêter sur l'antisémitisme partout au pays, mesurer l'ampleur de la menace, analyser les sources et les responsables de l'antisémitisme passé et actuel, formuler des recommandations claires et concrètes pour protéger immédiatement les Juifs du Canada et assurer leur sécurité à long terme tout en défendant les valeurs canadiennes. Cette commission royale servirait à montrer que la crise de l'antisémitisme est une préoccupation nationale, documenter l'ampleur de l'antisémitisme partout au pays et démontrer que le gouvernement du Canada agit de façon coordonnée pour freiner l'antisémitisme et protéger la sécurité et le bien-être des Canadiens juifs, ainsi que nos valeurs fondamentales. Deuxièmement, nomination immédiate d'un envoyé spécial contre l'antisémitisme. Le poste est vacant depuis le 17 juillet 2025. Sans envoyé spécial, le bureau ne peut pas remplir son rôle. Alors, en l'absence de cette personne, le Canada n'a plus de voix officielle pour représenter la communauté juive auprès du gouvernement fédéral sur les enjeux liés à l'antisémitisme et à la mémoire de l'Holocauste. Chaque jour qui passe que ce poste reste vacant, les Canadiens juifs sont privés de cette voix essentielle au sein du gouvernement. Cette situation affaiblit la crédibilité internationale du Canada et donne l'impression d'un manque d'engagement dans la lutte contre l'antisémitisme. Au printemps, Brith publiera son rapport annuel 2025 sur l'incident antisémite. Les premières données sont alarmantes et montrent que la situation continue de se détériorer en 2026. Cette situation exige une action de tous les niveaux du gouvernement. L'antisémitisme est présent, persistant et en croissance. Il vise à s'imposer et doit être stoppé. Il faut regarder la réalité en face. Il faut agir avec les experts et la communauté juive en mettant en place des mesures concrètes. Le moment d'agir est maintenant. Pour créer une commission royale sur l'antisémitisme et pour nommer immédiatement un envoyé spécial. Le moment d'agir, c'est maintenant, pour assurer la sécurité et dignité des Canadiens juifs et pour défendre les valeurs fondamentales du Canada. Merci.
Merci. Thank you. We will now take questions from journalists on Zoom. If you have a question, please use the raise hand function. As usual, one question, one follow-up. Pour les journalistes présents sur Zoom, si vous avez une question, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction main levée. Comme à l'habitude, une question et une question de suivi. Dylan Robertson, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking our questions. You mentioned that you want an immediate appointment of the envoy, and when we asked the Prime Minister's office about this, the statement said that they are continuing significant engagement with the community on how best to build on this crucial work for the year ahead. I wanted to know, is B'nai Brith being consulted by PMO? What does that look like? Is that the right tone? You're saying that we're undermining our international reputation here, but it seems like you're saying we need an immediate appointment and the PMOs is dragging their feet.
We sent a letter most recently as I mentioned earlier, and thank you for your question. We sent a letter most recently on January 15th. We recognize issues of this kind of national importance do take some time, but we can't afford any more time, really. B'nai Brith Canada needs to be at the table, involved in additional, further, and increased levels of conversation so we can help move the needle on this important issue without any delay. So any further attempts to push back, delay, allow for additional meetings that will, to use your words, sort of drag this along are no longer acceptable. You can see the systemic national crisis that has emerged. It has to be addressed now.
I'm hoping that you can sort of clarify what consultations that you've had so far, because you're saying B'nai Brith needs to be at the table, and I'm not sure if you mean to say that you guys aren't included in what the PMO has called significant engagement with the community.
We've had very minimal, appropriate levels of engagement with the PMO. We are currently scheduled to be meeting shortly. I hope that we're going to see the traction we need at that upcoming meeting.
Thank you. Next question, Mark Ramsey, please go ahead.
Hello, thanks for taking my question. I'm just wondering, with respect to Bill C9, the anti-hate bill, I'm just wondering what you guys make of the Conservatives opposing that bill and not letting it get passed through the Justice Committee. They've typically been, champions of fighting anti-Semitism or pushing forward some of the measures that you guys have called for. But on this one, they are obstructing it. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts on that are.
Thanks for your question, Mark. I do want to keep the focus of today on the topic at hand. With that said, I will offer that we'd like to see a nonpartisan approach to Bill C9, important legislation that we support with appropriate amendments. We think it's critical for all of Canada's representation, all of our leadership to get on board and put our hands together and make sure that we move matters forward that are going to help solve this problem, including Bill C9 with appropriate amendments.
Thank you. And on the envoy, I'm just wondering, there's been some people, the Conservatives and some even Liberals who've said that it might be best to just scrap, the special envoy positions, both for anti-Semitism and the Islamophobia one. What do you make of that suggestion?
I think the answer to that question would depend on what those positions collapse into. If those positions would collapse into some alternative, meaningful form of getting to where we need to go, then certainly we'd be open to hearing about that. And certainly there are many possibilities of circumstances where we could be supporting that. But while we have a vacancy, the position needs to be filled immediately.
Thank you. Next question, Kristen Schmitz. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Could you tell us, please, what you would see as the most important things in law reform and legal enforcement that you would like to see? Where are we falling down and what needs to happen right now?
We think there needs to be a whole of government approach to tackling the problem. We need people to be willing to sit down at the table together to recognize that the problem is systemic and national. And we think that one of the ways we can achieve the goals that we need to achieve are with our two asks that we've put forward today. Because the national, the infiltration really of this Jew hatred virus into our national culture undermines all of Canada's values. It's not what we stand for in this beautiful country, and we need to fix the problem. And that means everybody saying we're willing to sit down together, acknowledge the problem, and address it.
Do you have a follow-up, Kristen?
Yeah, do you not have some suggestions for immediate improvement in law enforcement, for example? Do there need to be more prosecutions? There's been lots of education happening since March of 2025. But on the ground, do you see any improvements that could happen?
Yeah, well, we see the proposed amendments that we're behind with Bill C9 being an immediate legislative initiative that should move forward. We'd also like to see all of the finger pointing stop amongst all agencies and levels of government, and everyone saying there are things that we can do better in these spaces, and that will include enforcement on the ground. It will include looking at hate as a critical factor when we're assessing charges that are being laid, both at the bail stage and sentencing stage. It will include further education in all sectors, including antisemitism education, in addition to Holocaust remembrance education. We'd like to see all of those things happening across all sectors, so the decision makers are actually making decisions from an informed point of view. And when they have that information and can speak from a place of knowledge and understanding, working together to get to where we need to go.
Thank you. Next question, Dylan Robertson, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks again. I'm wondering how much of this is an issue about the provinces. I think you mentioned off the top that this is about the federal government, but it also goes beyond that, especially if you're calling for a royal commission here. I mean, presumably that would include the provinces. Are you willing to name any provincial policies or lack of policies that you're seeing that are contributing to this problem?
So I won't name any specific policies today that are contributing. What I will say is that we're seeing the problem permeate into every province and territory across our vast country. We're seeing, like I mentioned earlier, 17 or more reported incidents a day. We're seeing daily lives of Jewish people being impacted. We're seeing the values that Canada stands for being eroded and undermined across the country. So we know that there are systemic problems. We can spend time finger pointing on, is it their fault, is it their fault, or their fault? And the only way we're going to get to the bottom of that is with the Royal Commission that we're asking for, which will have the authority and scope to actually properly answer those questions. And we want to do that before there is a terrorist attack like we've seen in other countries around the world, not in response to it.
Thank you. And I just wanted to get a sense of, ever since the ceasefire of sorts came into place last October, if there has been any change. We know that the conflict itself is showing up less in media. I'm just wondering, in terms of anti-Semitic incidents, I mean, clearly this is still happening, but I'm just wondering if the nature, the character, or the rate of it has, gotten worse or the opposite, or if there's been any change since October of last year.
Well, certainly the statistics show us that it has not improved. In fact, it's continued to progress and decline. I mentioned earlier our preliminary findings in our most recent work being done for the current annual audit on anti-Semitic incidents is not promising. It shows reason to be very concerned. We're also seeing an increase at exponential levels in this newest form of contemporary anti-Semitism, political anti-Semitism. So the collective and malicious punishment of the Jewish people across Canada for people's opinions on geopolitical issues and foreign conflicts around the world. So all of those factors have certainly shown us that the situation is getting worse and not better.
Next question, Kristen, please go ahead.
Yeah, are the existing criminal laws against that would impact anti-Semitic incidents being adequately prioritized and enforced in Canada?
Certainly, we would say that there needs to be more enforcement across Canada. We think that there are elements of the criminal code that have sufficient teeth to warrant stronger enforcement that we're not seeing. And we have a lot of questions as to why that's the case. We also think that that doesn't sit in a mutually exclusive space to saying it will help to name additional elements of hate in our criminal code, to take away any ambiguity, and to certainly give more authority for action and enforcement at the ground level.
Thank you.
And last question, Mark Ramsey, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking one more question from me. It's a bit unrelated, I'm sorry about that, but I was just wondering if you've received at all in the last few weeks or months any update on when the RCMP had said it would be doing an investigation into potential war crimes with Israel or Hamas. There was supposed to be, a community event where they would give an update to the community that I believe was postponed or canceled. Have you heard anything about that situation?
I haven't received any substantive updates to me that I can speak to today, so I'll have to defer that for when we have more information to share.
Thanks.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference.
Thank you to everybody who joined us both in person and online.
Merci, ça se conclut cette conférence de presse.